I'm loving this little ambiance music to get us started. Hello, everyone. Just waiting for people to trickle in. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Bonjour et bienvenue. Thank you all for joining us today. For those who don't know me, my name is Merette Mathieu. I'm the Partnerships Manager at New Power Labs, also known as Labo Pouvoir Innovant in French. For those who are joining us for the first time or are less familiar with our work, New Power Labs is a think tank, do tank, and our work focuses on moving capital and shifting power to underfunded and overlooked communities. And this work spans across the rich diversity we have in Canada, across gender identity and ethnicity, abilities, sexual orientation, citizenship status, language, and more. And we work in partnerships with those who deploy capital. So from philanthropy to impact investing, venture capital, traditional finance, so really across the capital spectrum. And we do this work with a growing group of core partners we're incredibly grateful for. These include Dicko Impact Lab, World Education Services, Coast Capital, Ontario Trillium Foundation, and Community Foundations of Canada. And more recently, we welcomed Inspirit Foundation and Vancouver Foundation. And in my role in partnerships, it's been truly inspiring to witness firsthand how the power of the collective and the impact that a mobilized community can have when it's aligned on a common goal and also equipped with the right tools. Before I move forward, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that I do live, work, and play in Toronto, now known as Toronto. In Mohawk, it means where there are trees standing in the water. Today, Toronto is covered under Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. It is the traditional territory of many First Peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and it is today also home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And as an organization focused on capital flow towards underfunded communities, New Power Labs commits to partnering and supporting Indigenous communities in our research, our practices, our partnerships. We know that there continues to be a disproportionate impact to Indigenous participation in Canada's economy. And that's a result of our history. And there's so much more we need to do, and we're only just beginning. Quick note on housekeeping items. We do have many of you joining us online today, and we'd love to meet you. So please introduce yourself in the chat. This session will be recorded. The recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. To turn on closed captions, if you need them, please click on the CC icon at the bottom of your screen. And if you require French captions, you can click on the arrow next to the CC button and then choose the French option. All right, last thing before I introduce our speakers, we will have a Q&A session at the end of our discussion. So please feel free to submit your questions to the comment section or Q&A box as we go along. And also you can vote for other questions. Okay, It is my absolute pleasure to introduce two phenomenal speakers today, Susan Henry and Oumar Dicko, for a conversation about microfinance and its promise and impact, its challenges and opportunities in a context where individuals from diverse backgrounds are still struggling today in this country to access financial resources. And this is a topic that is particularly dear to me as I started my career in microfinance. And so I'm really excited to get started with our guests. Susan, we met recently, but you're a longtime friend of New Power Labs. You have over 25 years experience working with underserved and underrepresented individuals, organizations, communities, always with a focus on foundation of financial inclusion for all. You were instrumental in leading the launch of Alterna Savings award-winning community microfinance program and the Community Loan Funds Partnership Program, where since its inception in 2000, over $8.6 million in loans have been dispersed. And you're now responsible for the strategic direction of Alterna's Community Impact Department, including oversight of the portfolio in affordable housing, nonprofits, the charitable sector, the community microfinance program, community financial education program, and granting programs. Oumar, we actually had a chance to work together back when I was building Windmill's Quebec chapter prior to joining New Power Labs. You are the National Director of Stakeholder Relations in Quebec at Windmill Microlending, and you lead their partnerships with governments across the country. Windmill works to empower skilled immigrants and refugees to achieve professional and economic prosperity in Canada through the provision of microloans and support. And as of today, the national charity has supported over 10,000 newcomers across Canada and has provided over $93 million in low-interest microloans. Thank you so very much to both of you for being with us today. Quick reminder for those listening, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, put your questions for our speakers in the Q&A section. All right, we love to start our webinars with a quick poll. So on your screens, you'll have a question pop up. How familiar are you with microfinance? Just general question to get a sense of the room, who's with us today. How much do you know about microfinance? So I'll give you another few seconds to enter your answers. All right, we have some variety, some people who are not familiar at all with microfinance and some people who feel pretty knowledgeable. This is great to see. And I see most of you said 3 or 4. So it's definitely a great start. If you're familiar with microlending, we'll dig deeper into the topic and approach it from different angles. If you are not familiar at all, then hopefully you can take some great insights from it and possible ideas for your organizations as well. Let's jump into it. When it comes to flowing more capital to historically underfunded communities in Canada, microfinance has always been seen as this one channel to address the lack of access to financial resources for Black communities, Indigenous communities, people of color, women, immigrants, and other diverse groups that are left behind currently by traditional financial institutions. So maybe we start with you, Susan, and then Oumar. If you can introduce yourself by sharing more about the model, the structure at Alterna, and also speak about the impact that it has on access to microfinance for those communities that you serve.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to this discussion. And, first I have to start by saying Alterna has been around for 115 years, leader in Canadian cooperative banking landscape, ranked among Canada's 10 top credit unions. Not just a financial institution, it's a member-owned cooperative with more than 210 members and operating a network of over 40 branches across Ontario. And, Alterna difference from banks in that the profits are reinvested back into the communities we live and work. And one of the ways we invest is through initiatives like our community microfinance program. Microfinance is not a common practice in Canada. It is used more in developing countries to address poverty. But we know, and I'm going to speak of Ontario because we operate in a province of Ontario, that Ontario, like many provinces and territories in Canada, there's a segment of the population that's unable to access mainstream financing to start a business or for professional development. And we know that, if access to capital can lead to individuals being able to support, themselves and their families. So our program has been an industry leader, as you mentioned, for over 20 years. And our primary objective of the program is to work within communities to address socioeconomic inequalities by creating opportunities for financial independence and breaking down those barriers to banking, which is often excluded from finances. So our program focuses on underserved individuals and organizations, low-income individuals, self-employed individuals, business startups, new Canadians, and individuals transitioning into the workforce. And many of these individuals are Black, Indigenous people of color, women, and racialized Canadians. And within our program, we offer different types of loans. So, we got very targeted in who would access a microloan. So we have social entrepreneurs and enterprises, and we know that they support, they use their profit they maximize their profit for social good in order to have better strategies in our world. Women entrepreneurs is a second loan product that we developed, and we know that women needed flexibility with the multiple demands that they had, and so our program was designed for them. Low-income individuals are entrepreneurs who are looking to bridge their income gap. So we have those who are part-time and might need that extra income. That loan product is good for them. And then new Canadians that's transitioning into the workforce. So we support individuals who are pursuing training, exams, licensing, or who needs to purchase tools of the trade that will lead to employment in their chosen fields. And last, we have our skilled professional and trades. And this is really support entrepreneurs of all sectors, whether they're startups or seasoned in business, they can get a loan through that product. What we do know also is that traditional financing, often you need historical financials, you need personal positive net worth, and you need high credit scores. And we know that lending to some underserved individuals, particularly those who require like loan startups, that differs. That sometimes that eligibility, that criteria, that borrower's profile will be different. So we customize our program to suit those borrowers. We use what we call an inclusive character-based lending practice, where aside from the traditional criteria, we look at things like someone's personal commitment, their experience and their skill set, and the concept of their business idea. We have seen firsthand that microloans can help individuals increase his or her income, and what usually is an insignificant loan, because these loans tend to be small, or our loans range from $500 to $25,000, that these loans can help bring household stability by providing access to food and shelter, clothing, and helping to build assets. And the overall macroeconomics is that it can help alleviate poverty and improve quality of life for individuals and support healthy and vital neighborhoods.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot there, and the model itself is just so different, right, from what you can see at other institutions. So thank you for sharing that, Oumar. How about Windmill? What is the structure of the organization, and how does that impact the communities that we're trying to serve in terms of access to capital?
Thanks, Merette. First, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here to have this important conversation about microfinance in Canada. For those of you on the call who are not very familiar with Windmill Microlending, we are a national charity that works to empower skilled immigrants and refugees to achieve professional and economic prosperity here in Canada. And we do this with an innovative model that provides low-interest microloans coupled with tailored wraparound support, such as career success coaching, financial literacy training, and mentorship to help newcomers navigate the labor market here in Canada. As we all know, each year Canada welcomes over hundreds of thousands of immigrants and refugees. Many of them are highly educated because we focus specifically in Canada on very skilled immigrants and economic immigration. Those immigrants have valuable experience and professions and trades, but too often their credentials and experience are not recognized in Canada. And without access to credit, they're unable to afford the cost of accreditation and licensing. And this leads to long-term underemployment among newcomers, poverty among newcomers, and specifically Canada loses valuable talent in professions and sectors where they are critically needed, especially right now when we're seeing the severe labor shortages across sectors. Historically, newcomers have difficulty accessing mainstream credit. And, Susan talked about that because first they lack credit history in Canada. They're newcomers, they don't have credit history in Canada, and they do not have any assets to secure loans from mainstream financial institutions. So Windmill provides an innovative and timely solution to that issue by providing skilled newcomers with the support and services that they need to succeed in Canada. We've been operating in Canada since 2005. And we were started really as a grassroots organization in Calgary. Since our inception, we served over 10,000 immigrants in every part of the country, immigrants and refugees. We provided over $93 million in loans that we manage and administer ourselves. We do not work with a financial institution to administer our loans, so we do that internally. And our clients, after receiving our services, are able to more than triple their income. Our repayment rate also hovers over 95%. I think these results highlight the effectiveness of our lending program, but also the success of our clients and really the power of micro and inclusive finance in Canada.
Right. And these are great models of financing. In my opinion, they don't get enough visibility by public,
That's
perhaps,
right.
but they surely make economic sense at the very least on top of the social value and the social impact. And I see that you're both clearly passionate about what you do. On a more personal note, what drives you to do this work? Susan?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a former entrepreneur myself for many years. So, I understood the challenges when starting a business on getting access to financing, particularly when you are from underserved communities. I also understood the need for education and the importance that, accessing capital to get business off the ground, right? So I wanted to help find solutions for underserved entrepreneurs and individuals to be able to access that capital and to be able to provide that education that's so important that Oumar talked about, the wraparound supports and the education that helps to make sound financial decisions. Again, for me, myself, I was instrumental in the development and implementation of our community microfinance program over 23 years ago. And fun fact, that's when I started Alterna. 23 years ago, it coincides with the program. And, my role now, which I love, is really around involving the strategic direction of how the program operates and lending my expertise where necessary on policy. So, seeing other initiatives or innovative products developed based on some of the lessons learned from our microfinance program. So, and I think also, what keeps me going is, being able to do the work that I do within an organization like Alterna, which is part of, which has a commitment to equity in all its business areas. I think, Alterna itself as an organization want to see improvement and inclusive access to financing, building wealth and healthy communities. So I think I pinch myself in the morning because I often say I have one of the best jobs you can ever have in helping to make a difference in the lives of individuals.
Isn't that a good feeling? Oumar, do you feel the same?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is the work of passion for many of us in this sector. And for me, what really drives me to do this work, a couple of things. First, I'm a true believer in the power of giving opportunities to underrepresented groups and marginalized communities. And I think through inclusive, social, and microfinance, we can give that opportunity to those groups to realize the full potential and convert it into prosperity, not only for themselves, their families, their communities, but for all society in Canada in general. I think that is really, really important that those communities are included through those through microfinance and social financing. On a personal note, the reason why, one of the reasons why I chose to work at Windmill, I'm an immigrant myself. I saw my parents struggle with the same issues, getting their credential and experience recognized in Canada. And those are issues that Windmill is actually solving. And my parents would have benefited from that should they have known about Windmill at the time. So I think that provides me with additional motivation and drive to do this work to ensure that immigrants and newcomers in Canada can thrive and prosper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a promise there, right? The promise of microlending and how they can help so many individuals from diverse groups. Susan, as one of the early champions of microfinance in Canada, you've definitely had a lot of amazing, I'm sure you have a lot of amazing stories, but you had your fair share of challenges, I suppose. So what would be the top 1 to 3 barriers that you've seen in your work to advance microfinance? Both in the context of your organization now, but also more broadly speaking in the financial landscape in Canada. And maybe if you want to say a word about how you're thinking about addressing these barriers as well.
Mm-hmm. I think I have to start with EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion, because it's played a pivotal role in how some groups of entrepreneurs can succeed. And while, equality means that money is now accessible because there are many various programs in the last couple of years that has, come up, the starting point tends to be different for underserved communities, and their investment readiness is different. And so, for example, in some underserved communities, from my perspective, there's a need to educate entrepreneurs in the areas such as understanding and preparing business financial statements, their income tax. When I see many of them, that is a big challenge. And understanding the business plan, projections, and operations. So I think more work needs to go into those areas from a lender's perspective. I also think that, while access to capital is available, access to market is limited for underserved entrepreneurs. So, for that, we know that many of them have many barriers in the ecosystem when competing for business. So, there needs to be more inclusive procurement plans to help them. Some other barriers that we've noticed is social capital, which includes their network opportunities, are missing. So, the opportunities, I think, to expand on these areas would be great. And, how are we working through some of this at Alterna? We focus on providing inclusive wraparound supports to our members and to the entrepreneurs within our program. So through our financial education program, we provide workshops and resources to entrepreneurs on different topics to help build wealth. And some of the workshops we're getting ready to plan for, like this year, we collaborate with industry experts. So things like small business taxes through CRA. We also have budgeting for small business, sales training for entrepreneurs. And also, we work with Procurement Assistant Canada this year to facilitate a webinar by Procurement Canada, because again, like I mentioned, we see that, as some of the challenge areas. That's just a few, to name a few.
And I'm sure, Oumar, you see some of those same challenges in your work. I'll let you say a few words on that, but if you can then talk about the innovations that you see in microfinance and how those innovations are making a difference for underserved populations. Our audience being mainly capital deployers, it'd be interesting to explore how these new approaches of doing this work advance equity in the space and what we can actually learn and possibly replicate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Susan has covered the question on the barriers very well. So I'm just going to say a few words on this. For me, I think education really matters. Just like at Windmill, in addition to providing financial support to our clients, we do not just do that and tell them to carry on. We provide them with other support to ensure that they can be successful. Career success coaching, for example, to guide them through the credential recognition process. Financial literacy to ensure that as they're taking a loan, they know exactly what they're getting themselves into and they understand the basic of the financial system in Canada, and mentorship as well to help those newcomers build the network that they need, navigate through the labor market in Canada. But I think for organizations in the space that are providing microfinance, I think access to low capital is one of the key barriers. It's very, very important that organizations are able to access low cost capital to carry on their work and to scale. At Windmill, we've been successful in terms of fundraising, and our community bonds program has allowed us to grow and serve significantly more newcomers. We wouldn't have been able to do the work that we are doing currently and grow to serve over 10,000 skilled newcomers across Canada if we didn't have that program in place. Since we launched it in 2018, we raised over $30 million in community bonds. And I also think governments have a role to play in supporting organizations in this space through funding and facilitating access to low-cost capital. And I'm seeing a few folks for ESDC on the call. I think the Social Finance Fund is innovative. It's a great program that is going to allow capital to flow to organizations in this space. And finally, I think, Merette, you touched on it as well, awareness. We need people, groups that we serve, we need them to know about organizations that are providing these kind of services. I didn't know that Alterna Savings had all these services for underrepresented groups. So it's good for us to do a better job and to make sure that the groups that we're serving know a little bit more about us and our services. And in terms of innovations that are happening in this space, very innovative work is happening. Many organizations are doing great work. For example, recently I came across the Black North Initiative with their homeownership bridge program for the Black community that has a great design that allow Black communities to have access to home ownership and to mortgages that are community focused. In addition to the capital actually provided for those mortgages, they provide those homeowners or the applicants with additional services such as financial literacy, financial management, financial planning, and a homeownership education program, because it's very important for people to know about mortgages, how that work, and homeownership in general. So I think for me, it really, really matters that in addition to providing the financial support, there's also education provided to the clients that we serve.
Thank you for that, Oumar and Susan. There's just so much happening in this space right now.
Sorry, if I could just chime in on that one answer, because Oumar brought up the Social Finance Fund, and I have to make a play for nonprofit, community loan funds, because, they play a pivotal role in helping to strengthen communities and fight poverty. And, they rely on investor dollars, so philanthropic organization. And when we think of the Social Finance Fund, where it's going to deploy capital, but how that capital comes together is important. And what it needs are community loan funds will need to partner more with philanthropic and investor organizations that can help provide some of the capital that needs to be matched in order to get those Social Finance Fund dollars. So I'm just putting that plug out there because it's so important. If we want to see this work continue, that the philanthropic and investor organizations have to partner more with these nonprofit community loan funds.
it's such a timely conversation. I agree with you, Susan, and thank you, Oumar, for mentioning it. Actually, at New Power Labs, we are working with a number of partners in London, Ontario, on a community loan fund. So if you're interested, reach out. We're just at the very early stage of that really exciting project. And also, just to jump on something that you said, Oumar, about innovation fundraising and the community bond program at Windmill, I think it's really important to think about innovation, both in how we deploy services and what financial tools and services are available, but also how we maintain the model, how we make sure that it's sustainable, and how we scale it and grow it so more people can benefit from the amazing services that we offer. Susan, yeah.
So if I can quickly jump in with my shameless plug here for those capital deployers on the call, if you're interested in the Windmill's community bonds, I'll be happy to provide you with more information on that. It's a great program. We have a great repayment rate, so it's a pretty secure investment.
It is your job, so I don't blame you for that plug, Oumar. So we were talking about innovative solutions. Susan, perhaps a different way of thinking about innovation from a different angle is to think about development of products and making sure that they're culturally sensitive and tailored to the diverse needs of our communities. There's definitely innovation in that process in itself. So how do we ensure that the financial services that we offer are in fact aligned with community needs and our mission as an organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us, Alterna close ties to the community and local organization really helps us to identify where innovation is needed and also understand who are most likely to be the benefactors of that, right? So it's really how we work with our community. So through research and outreach, we develop a number of financial solutions that's been tailored to meet the needs of entrepreneurs. For example, healthy savings are essential for micro and small entrepreneurs. And that point was really driven home during the economic crisis, which was during the COVID-19. That pandemic highlighted for us the need to provide additional savings support to entrepreneurs and small business owners to allow them to be better positioned in the event of future crisis. So we created what we call the Micro Savings Program, and it was designed to build resilience. It's a built-in savings program that empowers entrepreneurs to create financial reserves for their small business and work towards their long-term giving. So how does it work? So borrowers can opt to add up to about 1% of their microloan repayment into a savings vehicle. And it stays in that savings vehicle until the loan is paid out. And they can use it for further development of their business or to establish maybe something like an RRSP. And that micro savings enhancement is really one of the first of its kind in Canada. And it was all brought on again by seeing the gap in the community, particularly in entrepreneurs during that period. We also created what we call our micro business banking package. And, this provides entrepreneurs and holistic financial advice. It's customized product offering, and it helps them to sort of build and grow their business. And it includes business and personal banking package, micro savings is attached to it, and it's also tied with credit cards and other services and other party suppliers that we have. We also work with BDC. We developed a joint program in 2021. And it was really to increase financial access to capital for underrepresented entrepreneurs in Ontario. And it focuses on Black entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, and social entrepreneurs. And if they receive financing through us up to $25,000, BDC will possibly match that for a total of $50,000. And for us, we found that these three groups were, the least likely to get any financing through traditional sources. And so that partnership was important. And lastly, I think the Black Opportunity Loan Fund, Alterna was invited to the table to be part of the team developing the Black entrepreneurship loan with the federal government. We partner with an organization called FACE, Federation of African Canadian Economics, to create the first ever Black entrepreneurship loan fund microfinance pilot program. And that's because the original Black entrepreneurship loan fund was focused a little bit on loans 25,000 and under. But, we know that the community needed smaller loans. Many of them are home-based service businesses, and that those loans would make a difference to the individuals who could access them.
No, that it's definitely great to see all these different programs specifically focused on parts of that population, because we know that they have very specific needs that need to be addressed, and we can't have a blanket approach to this. Oumar, Windmill, you're already focused on a specific segment of the population, that be immigrants and refugees. So do you want to say a few words on how you've adapted your processes internally and also developed the organization to respond to their specific needs?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I think it's critical that the groups that we serve are represented within the organization, on our board, and also involved in the decision-making. We involve immigrants and refugees in all aspects of our work, and we ensure that their voices and the perspective are at the center of our decision-making process. We make a very conscious and deliberate effort to involve newcomers in all stages of our work. We actively seek out their feedback and engage them. We gather input and feedback through surveys and other channels, such as Google reviews. They can also provide their feedback to the staff and the coaches that they work with. We work very diligently to ensure that the concerns and the feedback, and we use that information to design our program and to change our program. I'll give you an example, and Merette, you may be very well aware of that, being a former Windmiller. We launched a mentorship program in 2019 based on the feedback that we received from our clients. Many of our clients were saying to us that a mentorship program would be very helpful to them. It will help them build a network, help them navigate the labor market in Canada. And since then, we've matched over 600 newcomers with professionals in their field, and our mentees continue to significantly improve their professional and economic outcomes after participating in the program. And we're seeing that the newcomers that are participating in the mentorship program have better outcomes than those that do not. So that's already something that have better served our clients. We also strive as an organization to build a diverse and inclusive workforce through hiring and leadership. We have staff, board of directors, and volunteers that reflect the diverse background and experience of the newcomers we serve. The vast majority of our staff at Windmill are either immigrants themselves or with parents that are immigrated to Canada. We provide our staff and leadership with ongoing training to develop cultural competencies, because we deal with newcomers, people that are new to Canada, and a deeper understanding of equity and inclusion. I think that's key as well. And we collect also data to help us understand the impact of our programs and identify areas of improvements. We've signed on to the Government of Canada 50-30 challenge, which is focused on gender diversity and representation of the underrepresented group. And we work to continue to create a more inclusive program at Windmill. I would say that we even have a former client that's actually on our board and serve as one of the board members, providing strategic direction to the organization. So I think it's really, really important as we do this work that we continue to involve the groups that we serve in the decision-making process.
Yeah, I was about to mention it if you didn't. So I love that story, how you helped a client and eventually they were able to give back to the organization by serving on the board. And you touched on very important questions of power and power sharing, which of course interest us at New Power Labs. And so thank you for sharing some thoughts around how those voices from the community are also informing your processes and how those decisions around loan granting are made. I just want to take a moment to remind our audience that you can ask questions through the Q&A box. We've had some questions in the comment section already, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Before we get to our Q&A, I just want to shift gears a little bit. Oumar, you mentioned data already. So at New Power Labs, we think a lot about data and how it can be collected and used to ensure equitable access to capital. We actually have a whole research arm that is fully dedicated to these questions and inform also our programming and project initiatives. So on that question of data, what data do your organizations actually collect, and how does that help you operate the organization and scale the work that you're doing, right? Going back to what we mentioned, Susan, in terms of sustainability and making sure that the work and the organization grows. How do we use data for that purpose? And what would help the broader sector in terms of data collection and data insights? Who wants to take this one first?
I mean, I can jump in. As the saying goes, data is the new gold or oil. So I think going forward, especially with machine learning and AI that is developing very rapidly, data is becoming increasingly important. And at Windmill, we actually place great importance on data. We collect a lot of data from our clients, some demographics data on income prior to receiving our services, data on employment prior and after receiving our services. And this is how we gauge the success and the outcomes of our program. We collect data every step of the way, either through survey that our clients complete, through focus groups, through the coaches that are working one-on-one with each of the clients and providing information there. So this gives us a better understanding of our clients' experience, and we can develop approaches and new programs that are tailored to better support our clients and to the need of our clients. So we think that looking at data, understanding some of the key patterns that we can see in the data is very, very important to monitoring our progress, measure performance, and continuously improve our services. That being said, I think while data is critical to our work, and I think in our sector, we need to be very, very cautious and take the appropriate steps regarding privacy, security of our data, particularly in light of the increased cybersecurity issues that have been happening everywhere recently. And also, I think while we use data, we got to understand that the data could be sometimes very biased. So we have to make sure if you're using data to drive decision making, we need to be aware of those biases that could be included in the data and ensure that we do not carry on with that.
Yeah, very, very good point. And Susan, as you think of answering this question, we have someone in the chat asking, or rather curious about how Windmill and Alterna are evaluating and assessing the good outcomes for clients. So how can data be used for impact measurement?
Yeah, great question to start with, because in terms of our community microfinance program, we've done several impact measurement studies in partnership with universities across Canada. And those impact studies help us to look at gap analysis where we need to improve. And it also informs us of what we're doing well. But I'm just going to say that data matters, but intentionality matters more. So, what you do with that data is really important.
Yeah.
And, the example that I would really give is, when I look at our own microfinance program, we've seen an increase in participation in Black and persons of color in our community program, increased from 34% in 2019 to 86%. And that was the intentionality of the grassroots efforts that we do within the communities and being out there and what the program has to offer, and also the government engagement that we have. And I think the research and data that we have on a larger level, what that's done is give us lessons learned on how we can now sort of leverage that for other untapped markets. So I think that's important.
Absolutely. And so we did transition to the question period pretty smoothly, but if you have other questions, please don't hesitate to input them in the chat. So we have some specific questions and more broad questions. So maybe very quickly, people are interested in knowing the typical loan size for Windmill, and for Alterna, perhaps the interest rates that you're currently charging for those businesses.
For Windmill, the maximum loan amount that we provide is actually $15,000, and in some cases we could go up to $25,000. And our average loan size right now it's a little over $11,000.
Yeah. And so for Alterna, our loans range anywhere from about 1,000 to 25,000, depending on the type of loan product that we have. Average loan is about between, I would say 10,000 is our average loan. And also, even though we go up to 25, we do have that partnership with BDC for women entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs, and social entrepreneurs that allow us to be able to lend up to 50,000 between the two organizations.
Great. And another specific question around educational workshops. I'm sure people were really interested in those. So are they just open to clients with loans or to everybody?
I can answer that. So our workshops, anyone can attend. Just reach out to us at microfinance@alterna.ca, and we can add you to the mailing list. But they were developed with our borrowers in mind, but we've opened them up for public use.
Great. There's someone asking or saying, thanks for mentioning the need for philanthropic funding to match/access capital from the Social Finance Fund. Windmill is a registered charity. How does Alterna plan to attract that philanthropic capital?
Alterna's role in like the Social Finance Fund, for example, could be an intermediary role, working on behalf and with nonprofits and community organizations. But we work with community loan funds right now. We provide investments into community loan funds who then lend those funds back out into the community. We have many different partnerships. So in one of our community loan funds, it would be the nonprofit and maybe a foundation where Alterna is doing the lending on behalf of that organization. And we are also what we call the infrastructure unit. So the loans come through Alterna, and we do all the operational and processing of the loans on behalf of the nonprofit organization.
Thank you for that. Another question, very specific, this one to Alterna. So our group is rural working from Collingwood to Owen Sound on affordable housing. Non-market housing entrepreneurs and NPOs have little access to credit unions or Alterna or microlending funds. Can you suggest some options in rural communities?
Okay, we should have some opportunity for locations in those areas. She said Collingwood and a few other areas. I would definitely have to look at where is our closest branch, but we also have online banking as well. So even if we don't have a branch in that area, we can definitely work with the organizations. And I have a strong interest. We have a strong interest in the affordable housing sector and working with organizations that want to advance that particular affordable housing right now. So definitely reach out to me because I think could be opportunities to think about how we can collaborate together.
Great. And since we have more time for questions, I again encourage people to send those over in the Q&A box. But maybe a larger question, and we've touched on it a bit earlier, but when it comes to creating a model that is actually sustainable in microfinance, what steps should we keep in mind to ensure that we ensure long-term success? I know, Susan, you've been early in the game, and and also a loan officer at Calmedo Metrofund, which was one of the first Canadian experiment in scaling sustainable microfinance. You have some great insights. There is a report that is available online. So if you don't mind sharing a few learnings about sustainability in microfinance, scaling, and then I would love to hear from Oumar on that as well.
Great question. Like you said, Calmedo was one of the first financial services to provide microfinance in Canada. It was a standalone loan fund, and it closed its operations in 2000. And those operations came into Alterna Savings. And that was really for the sustainability model, that if it was housed within a financial institution, that we would be able to offset some of the operational costs. And that's really how the program works. Microfinance is not something that makes money. It doesn't make a lot of money. The margins are very, very slim, if any, because the interest rates that we charge in Canada are relatively low compared to in other countries where it can almost sometimes border on predatory lending. So it's very different here. Our rates are very competitive to any of your traditional loans that you would get within your financial institution. So, for us, and we work with community loan funds. So we help them offset their costs by being the infrastructure unit for them as well. So, those are the ways that we help to keep microfinance, I think, going and scalable in this country. But I don't think, my answer would be it can't happen without support, support from philanthropic investors and government. Because when we think about the costs, so Oumar and I talk about the wraparound supports that we provide.
Yeah.
It's not just here's the loan and off you go. It's really understanding the communities you're working with, their barriers, and that all costs to work through that. So it's not just here's a digital loan and they're gone. We have to do a lot of meetings with these individuals. And so it will not be sustainable in my eyes. It has to be public-private partnerships with all these players coming together.
I have to say I completely agree with what Susan has just said. I think government support and private donors or philanthropic support is critical to the sustainability of microfinancing organizations in Canada. And Susan mentioned, because here in Canada, we do charge low interest rates, and we take great pride in ensuring that our clients pay as little interest as possible. For example, at Windmill, recently we decided our interest rates used to be flexible. And when interest rates started to rise in Canada post-pandemic, we saw that many of our clients saw their payments increased every month. And since our mission is centered around the success of our clients, we didn't want to put them in a bad situation. So we decided to fix our interest rates. Right now, our interest rate is 6.45, which is 50 basis points below prime. And to give you an example, if we were to charge an interest rates that would make our organization sustainable in terms of our operating funding, we would have to charge our clients over 22% on the loans, which is not sustainable for our clients, nor for ourselves. So I think it's important for microfinance organizations to have the support of governments going forward to continue to provide their services, and also the philanthropic sector.
Those are all really great thoughts. I'm just looking at the time, so I'd love to close us off with a few takeaways from our conversation. Again, so many interesting ideas have been shared, and a lot of wisdom within this conversation. So first, we heard of the importance of actually serving these diverse communities. Otherwise, we would be missing out on the immense potential of these individuals in contributing to our economy and social fabric. And microfinance is an effective tool to provide inclusive access to capital and have these groups thrive in Canada. We also heard from you two on the importance of supporting entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, providing capital, but going further than that, beyond just the financial support, right? Having an intentional approach, providing a holistic and culturally appropriate support and tools for newcomers and entrepreneurs. And that can look like financial training, networking opportunities, mentorship, workshops, etc. And it requires representation from the communities. It's not something we can do alone. It's something that needs to be informed by the community that we're serving, and develop these great power sharing models as well. We heard a little bit on data and its critical role in measuring impact and scaling an organization as well, but always with a word of caution around privacy, which we care deeply about at New Power Labs, as we also collect data that is very sensitive. And finally, on advancing microfinancing, collaboration and support from funders, such as foundations and government, is really important. And so these are all great takeaways. Before we close, I'd love to thank our audience for your support and commitment to more equitable capital flows. And we would love your feedback on this session. So you should see a poll pop up again on your screen. If you can just take a moment to fill that in. And before we leave, we usually ask our panelists for their closing thoughts. Maybe I'd like to do something slightly different this time. Susan, Oumar, if you had a magic wand, what shift would you want to see in your work, or more broadly speaking, in microfinance?
Wow. I mean, my magic wand would be what we so desperately want is, more financing opportunities, because more funding means fair access to financial inclusion for all. And again, that funding has to be in collaborations with many different stakeholders.
That's great. Oumar?
Am I allowed to wish for two things? Yeah, I would say the same thing. The first is access to low-cost capital, which is critical to our work and to the scale where we want to take microfinance in Canada. And second, I would say awareness and education around microfinance in Canada. It's very, very important. Not a lot of people know about microfinance, so I think it's important to have more awareness and education around that.
I grant you two wishes because I agree with them.
Thank you.
Alrighty, that's a great place to end. Thank you so much, Oumar, Susan, for bringing your depth of knowledge and experience to this conversation. We do believe that our partners in the audience appreciate your work at Alterna and Windmill, and we definitely hope that this will spark more conversations among capital deployers on deepening equity, diversity, and inclusion work. We encourage everyone to stay connected with Alterna Savings on their website, alterna.ca, with Windmill Microlending at windmillmicrolending.org. And stay in touch with us at newpowerlabs.org. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter called Equity Shots if you haven't already. And we also recently announced a new research project funded by the World Education Services on credit risk assessment for immigrants, refugees, and newcomers in Canada. So stay tuned and get in touch if you want to know more about this project and possibly work together on the initiative. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Susan, Oumar. Thank you to my colleague, Han, who's behind the scenes making all the magic happen. And thank you to our co-founders and core partners with whom none of this would be possible. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all.